In the late 90s, I noticed that Neptune and Pluto were in tandem in the cosmos, 60 degrees give and take. Even though Neptune takes around 150 years around the zodiac and Pluto takes around 245. Around the 1940s, they started to form a master yod, as I called it, hanging out 60 degrees apart. How does that work? Most planets' orbits are not circular, but are oblong, and they go through some signs quicker than others. For Neptune and Pluto, the farthest planets from us, they have been doing so for about 80 years. A sextile, or 60 degrees, creates what is called a yod, or inconjunct, which is 150 degrees from both planets on the other side of the chart. It is called the finger of God point, for it is pointing to the other side of the chart and says, "This is the answer. You just have to figure it out." In this video we are going to see how it shows which planet it is pointing to at any given time and see how we can use the information to plot our future. DJ TJ, as he is affectionately known, or not affectionately known, was born in 1997 with Pluto in Libra in the 4th house of his foundation and mom. Psychic Linda Grindle said that she heard he was not very complimentary at his mother's funeral, which makes sense with Pluto there. Uranus is at the midpoint of the yod, finger of God point, with the three of them aiming their arrow to the 10th of career, or importantly, dear old daddy. It's close to Chiron, saying his wound is intractably wound up in the son-father relationship. When he was around 20, he probably got his inheritance or some infusion of money in some form as the point moved over his Jupiter. Around the dawning of the 21st century, the point went over his ascendant, and when the point went over his Mars was when President Obama spoke at the Washington Press Club dinner while taking out Osama bin Laden at the same time. So he wasn't able to run over the remarks written for him, and his comments about the senior DJT basically touched off what happened for the last 10 plus years. DJ TJ has been an angry man in this time frame. Since then, the point is moving in on Saturn, where it joins Neptune Pluto as its arrow, and they all take aim at his natal Saturn in 2023. One thing about astrology, it makes you empathize for people. It's odd we don't have a time for Ivanka, yet she's a Scorpio, and they do like to have their lives mysterious. So just for that, there is that energy around her. For Ivanka, we have Neptune with Venus combined with Libra for her ethereal beauty. With that and Pluto between Jupiter and her Sun for her money karma, she has it made. Although there are people who have Jupiter and Pluto together that don't have that kind of money. Probably something to do with Pluto and all that Scorpio. Even though Saturn symbolizes father, the sun sign has elements for him too. So Jupiter, money, Pluto, power, the sun for dad, along with the stellium in Scorpio, while Uranus is the arrow to the yod, really describes daddy to a T. Embroiled in lawsuits, sex, power, money, politics, with Uranus as the grifter, and marching to his own drummer. Sometimes we can see family members more clearly in another member of their family's chart. But I digress. In her infancy, Saturn and Pluto, in a last gasp sliver of Libra before it moved into Scorpio, the odd point moved through Gemini through 84 and 96 in the solar 8th house. Being in Gemini in the money house of those in the 7th, like grandfather, for instance, saying with Pluto in Scorpio and Neptune in Capricorn, her answer during that time was using her intellect, Gemini, to not get into the emotional, reactionary mode of Scorpio and Cap, by learning how her grandfather wheeled and dealed, or she should have. In her 20s, the point moved through the 9th house of foreign lands and Cancer, developing her lines of women's apparel and jewelry. As her father flirted with the presidency, her early 30s, with the point moving through Leo, where her children were born from 2011 to 2016. DJ, TJ, and Eric have their finger of God point directed to the 10th house for Daddy and Chiron. This being a solar chart for Ivanka, one wonders if her Chiron might be in the 10th as well. But we do know that, in public at least, Donald dotes on her, so maybe not. Yet this chart has merits. The 7th house includes Dad's dad, Fred, so maybe he was on the wounds she is seeking to heal. It's generally thought that the Libra through Capricorn quadrant is the political quadrant, Libra being law, Scorpio being investigating, research, and skullduggery, while Sagittarius is politics itself, and Capricorn is laws and judiciary. So we can see how she might want to run for the presidency. But with Pluto at 24 of Libra, we see that the God point isn't going to meet up with that for a good time. As you have and will see on the other videos in this series, Pluto is an intrinsic part in the ascent to the presidency, not to mention her potential legal woes in the near future. In 2023, the finger of God point is going to be triggering her Mars, as it has for her father and DJ TJ before her in the recent months. Mars is her next planet in the crosshairs, but for her, it's in Virgo. So this is the chart for Eric Trump that is generally used with a C rating, because in a book it says that Ivana arranged to induce labor, so it was in the evening as to not interfere with Donald's business day. It goes on to say that she had lunch and she was in the delivery rooms promptly at 6 p.m., and by 9 she was walking around in a black peignoir. A birth time of 7 p.m. is speculative. I have Leo as my Venus sign, and I have a keen radar for the Leo energy. I was going to speculate the birth around 8:30 p.m. for a Virgo rising birth, but I saw some of his youth photos and I can see some Leo in there. So I'm going to go with 7:30 p.m. with a late Leo rising, with more dominantly with Virgo in the first house. Regardless which of the charts is accurate, somewhere in the last few years, the odd point went over his ascendant, while it has gone through his 12th of the hidden and unknown enemies, which sometimes can be our own subconscious sabotage patterns. Now he can be his own man. As I see the comedians on the late night shows using Eric as the butt of their jokes, I shudder how he is taking it. With Virgo dominantly in his first house, Virgo is a perfectionist and he gets his feelings hurt when he isn't perceived as perfect. Even if his first Leo chart is right, he would have half his first house up in Virgo. The main word and call to action when Pluto, Scorpio are in the mix is respect. And now the yod point is circling his ascendant. Pluto can see disrespect when it doesn't exist, but in this case, the comedians know what they are doing. The third house denotes siblings, and since he is the youngest, it would show with Mars close with Pluto and Saturn in the vicinity that he could have been bullied. Or, since the yod points to Daddy in the 10th house, he might have been the culprit, with biting remarks from the communication house. With Mars and Pluto together and Saturn in the vicinity, we could speculate that his siblings bullied him. But they say that Eric feels that TJ is a mentor to him. So since this is the yod figuration and it points to the 10th, we can establish that the yod point is pointing to Daddy as the culprit most likely. The three probably protected each other. The third denotes siblings and communication, and with these planets it would indicate harsh retorts. Eric was born in 1984, right after Pluto and Saturn conjoined, with the yod point near Chiron in the 10th. As is, Daddy is the wound they seek to heal in their lifetimes. Mars and Saturn are in the yod formation with Pluto, while Jupiter and Mercury team with Neptune. 6 planets of the 10, that's formidable. Pluto and Neptune move on from these positions. The yod point moved on, completing its trek through Gemini, his father's sun sign, Gemini, remember, until 1996, when he was 12. From there to 2008, he was in his teens, and in his 20s and in Leo, essentially he had a less prominent role in the 12th house, hidden. And in the end of Leo, he was heading up his father's businesses and wasn't as seen as much. Still, he was the butt of a comedian's comment. Now, as the yod encompasses his 7th house of marriage, and Saturn is in the mix in the middle, we may see him as a focal point, and he and his wife may divorce, just as his brother did when Saturn mooned through the 7th house before him. TJ and Ivanka have Pluto in Libra, but Eric has Pluto in his own sign of Scorpio. What did I say about respect as a Pluto word? He has that energy in spades. Eric has disrespect in his craw. Wherever Pluto is, in which sign it is, amplifies the energy to the 10th power. All those comedians might tamper down their rhetoric. The Plutonian energy is known to plot for eons to get their revenge. This period, 1984 to 1996, this half generation with Pluto in Scorpio, everyone has it, some more than others. Be careful of those in their 30s now, essentially, as they are looking for disrespect at every corner. Seeing where Pluto touches those planets one by one in its trek, those were times where Pluto energized each planet and essentially expanded it with its power. Around 2015, as their father was deciding to run for the presidency, one by one, the 3 kids were experiencing their Pluto square. He and his 2 siblings from Ivana moving to this challenging time one by one, with Ivanka's chart as the anchor of the three. Pluto moves slowly, so it only gets to this crucial square once in our lifetime. Pluto places the chess pieces in place for about 5 years before the game begins, so it's ready to go. For DJ, TJ, Ivanka, and 2015 and the years after for them as a unit, this was their time. When Pluto squares itself 90 degrees apart, it's a challenge when it's diamond making time, where the unformed carbon of cells forages into an unpenetrable diamond, or tries to. We all go through it, some easier than others. But all the previous Pluto experiences we've had come to coalesce, and it's deja vu, but this time you are an adult, not a child. You have similar experiences as you did in early days, but now you process them as an adult. Because Pluto has been moving faster in this 80-year frame, quote, kids, quotes, mid to late 40s are experiencing it now. Generation that Richard Nixon was born into experienced it in their 60s, he with Watergate. It can be a challenging time for those who were playing loose and fancy free. For DJ TJ, the finger of God point has recently been closing in to his natal Saturn, as I noted previously on the time frame. While in the sky, Saturn is at the middle of the finger of God point, 30 degrees between Neptune and Pluto. So the three malefic planets are all moving in to point to his natal Saturn at 0 Virgo in 2023. Saturn opposes itself every 28 to 30 years, and the chickens come to roost. But this one is going to be a doozy for DJ, TJ, Ivana, and Eric, being brought up on the knee of Donald Trump. Pluto places the chess pieces in place for about 5 years before the game begins, so it's ready to go. For DJ TJ, Pluto moved into its square position in 2015, while Ivanka's was 2021 and Eric in 2023. It's as if it's like deja vu, where the experiences with Pluto and each of their planets in line will play out in the future. For the siblings, their fate is intractably connected with their father, who was their Plutonian manifestation in their young lives and for some time to come.